Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town for this Friday, January 21st. I'm Gary Stevens. For a number of years with Juke and Eddie, and then yours truly, we had the phone lady join us, Ruth Goddard from AT&T, to answer your questions about not only phone service, but also telecommunications. Ruth retired at the end of 2021. And so, to use a term that Juke Van Os used to say about her predecessors, we got the telephone man. Greg Clark from AT&T joins us via the Zoom connection this morning. Greg, good morning and welcome to Talk of the Town.
Good morning, Gary, and thank you so much for having me. The Telephone Man, I think, was a song 30 or 40 years ago, Mr. Telephone Man.
Yeah, and Juke, of course, who was with us for over 60 years, passing away. It will be 6 years ago in March, but at the age of 91, but still sharp as a tack. He called John and a few of his others the Telephone Man, but it's a good thing to have because not only can Greg talk a little bit about what AT&T does and the services it provides, but he's pretty knowledgeable about some of the telecommunications issues. So if you have a question for Greg, he'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. Greg, before we get too further along, let us get to know a little bit about Greg Clark, your background and how you came to be a part of the AT&T team.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary, I'm just really excited. I'm so excited to meet you. Excited to get to know your listeners. Just first off, just the enormous amount of respect and praise for my colleague, Ruth Goddard, who retired after 40 plus years with the company in December. She is off on a well-earned retirement. She is just the best. We stay in touch. We've worked together forever. She has enormous shoes to fill. She's just so much fun. I cannot be more honored to represent Ruth's legacy and the company with your show. So a little about me. Started at the company as a computer programmer, ironically, way back and through several 15 or 20 jobs, migrated into our external affairs organization, where our role is to get to know the community, the issues in the community. I came up through the network organization at AT&T. I've worked in pretty much every department of the company, from the business office to our finance operation. I ran our network operations for a number of years. Have been in our government relations organization, and now I'm in our external and community affairs organization, and we're responsible for just getting to know the needs of the community. What's the voice of the public telling the company? What can we do to be a better corporate citizen as we navigate, the issues that you were just talking through in your remarks, 5 minutes ago. So looking to be part of that conversation, engage with your listener base, want to encourage a dialogue, build a relationship, and folks. When you help people with their issues, you solve the issues and the problems. And a year from now, a person may not recall what that specific issue was, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so, that's my job. We can get some great stuff done, and we can have a great time doing it.
Some of the ongoing topics that will come up from time to time, Greg, deals with phone service. Many people, businesses especially, still use landlines. Some people are concerned about spam calls, hackers, scam calls, and dealing with the best way to handle that. We always get at least a couple of calls, not so much in the phone segment, but through maybe once every 6 weeks or so, we get a call about somebody saying that they're having problems with the do not call list. So, yeah, there are some traditional phone line questions that will come from time to time from our listeners. And the fact that even though more and more people are use a term, cutting the cord in terms of having a landline, and more people are relying only on cellular or a smartphone service. The landline is not going to go away anytime soon.
That is absolutely correct. And, we're going to meet the customer where that customer is. If a customer prefers a landline, and landline takes many different definitions right now. You can have a phone that rings in your house, and it could be from any number of providers. And for the average consumer, it's difficult to tell if that call is coming through over what you would call a traditional landline service or some other kind of internet technology that happens to ring that same device. And so lots of change going on in the industry right there. It's becoming more digital. Our priorities we're focused on broadband, we're focused on wireless, of course, serving our landline customers, the folks that have been there with us through thick and thin. We're working closely with the government, how we can do some public-private partnerships on broadband expansion. And of course, one of the more important things that we're focused on right now is public safety. And what can we do more to enhance the safety and well-being of our first responders, of our doctors, our nurses, our educators, our fellow utility workers all across various industries, ambulance drivers. It's very important that folks have efficient, effective, ubiquitous, always reliable communication so we can talk to each other in times both good and bad.
Greg, the concerns about the rollout of 5K have come to a head with basically what seems to be a squabble between the Federal Aviation Administration and the Federal Communications Commission over 5K, especially around airports. And it involves Verizon and AT&T's rollout of 5K. The companies have voluntarily chose not to roll it out in areas near major airports, but there are still some concerns about the rollout of 5K. Obviously, you speak for AT&T, and understandably, we need to keep that in mind. But still, the concerns about 5K, how would you allay fears about whether or not the 5K is safe, and maybe your knowledge of the situation involving the FCC and the FAA on this whole matter?
Yeah, so Gary, thanks for that question. So 5G.
I apologize. I'm saying 5K because I'm thinking of some other things, but we're talking about 5G. Yes.
Yeah. And so these things will be at K one day, I'm sure, in the future. The company customers are demanding more and more wireless bandwidth from all of their providers, and so the government, as it decides how to allocate spectrum to carriers like AT&T, goes through just a very, very rigorous process. Once they determine a spectrum, spectrum is a frequency that operates in the radio wave space. Once they determine that a spectrum band can be transitioned from one owner to another, they put that spectrum up for auction. And so carriers bid on licenses to use that spectrum to transmit information for their customer base. And in the recent cases, I mean, the industry spent billions of dollars through some carefully curated and researched analysis conducted over years and years by the FCC in coordination with the rest of the federal government to determine whether or not what spectrum bands are suitable for private use, for carrier use. And in this case, the most recent auctions that were in the news showed a little difference of opinion between the FAA and the FCC. These issues, from our view, were settled years ago. And so we have voluntarily, we put out a statement, and I'll just read it to you here. We put out a statement earlier this week. We have voluntarily agreed to temporarily defer turning on a limited number of towers around certain airport runways as we continue to work with the aviation industry and the FAA to ensure that airplanes can safely land around airports that operate 5G. And so the issue is the altimeters that are on the airplanes operated a certain way. C-band spectrum, which is part of 5G, operates nearby, but there's significant buffer zones. In fact, there's a buffer zone 3 to 4 times larger than what the FAA requested for safe operation of their altimeters. And so it appears, based on what I've read, they're going through a process to certify each individual runway, type of airplane that they can safely maneuver. These processes have been in place overseas for a while. And our goal, we're frustrated by what the FAA is going through right now. It should have happened earlier in the process, but we remain confident that everything will operate safely and that the FAA and the FCC are doing their necessary due diligence from a government standpoint to work those issues out. We're just a player in it. We'll follow all their rules and guidelines.
Yeah, the 5G situation, there has been some sentiments, and I think it's a good way I'll put it, some sentiments about the overall safety. People thought, well, they're going to roll out 5G. People are going to have issues with the waves and it might cause some health issues. Yeah.
Our 5G transmitters, and 5G is not live in Ottawa County right now. We're working hard to bring it there soon. So it's not, we're in process of that, but the radio transmitters that emit those frequencies follow every single federal guideline for RF emissions. They're safer than your baby monitors, and any number of consumer devices already in use in our ecosystems that we call life.
And the other thing too, and I pointed this out when a lot of people have been discussing about expanding broadband. We got to get broadband out to more places. And I say, yeah, that's fine, but bandwidth as well. There's more people, there's going to be less bandwidth, and you're going to have issues. Like, for example, we have our Tulip Time Festival here in Holland in May, and we have several thousand of our closest friends coming into town and trying to use broadband. Good luck there. So yeah, bandwidth is almost as important as broadband in that regard.
It really is, and so we're committed. We want to be a player there. There's broadband is one of our big priorities, and the federal government over the last year has released funds. It's an unprecedented amount of resources that they've allocated to the states for a variety of uses, one of which is broadband. And one of the things that has happened down in southern Indiana, which really made us think, we are very interested in public-private partnerships as we roll out broadband. Vandenberg County, which is the southern tip of Indiana, we recently signed a contract with them to fiber up that county, where the county agreed to put in $9.9 million of their stimulus funds through the American Rescue Plan. We put in $29.7 million for a total investment of almost $39 million to fiber up living units, 20,000 living units across that county. We want to do more of that across counties all over the country, especially here in Michigan, Ottawa County, Kent County, Oakland County, Kalamazoo County. I mean, there's enormous opportunities. Eaton, Ingham, we're working hard to tell our story to the community leaders, to the various task forces that are in operation around the state. I'm a computer science grad from the University of Michigan. I've lived and was born and raised in Michigan my entire life. I love this techie stuff, and we try to talk about it in layman's terms so that it's easily understood, and we'll continue to work hard to do that. The other thing you mentioned about broadband, our first responders, I mean, they need the ability to be able to communicate in situations like the Tulip Time Festival, where you have, 10, 20,000 people at a time, over a period of several days walking around and, taking up that mobile bandwidth. FirstNet, which runs on the AT&T platform, is our dedicated public safety platform, wireless network, authorized by the federal government, that has some unique features that are special for first responders that allow them what we call priority and preemption, where in those situations, their calls, their texts, their messages have priority communication on the network. So that in the event it's congested, our first responders can get through and have their conversations. And, we're working hard with Ottawa County and the Holland Police Department and the folks in Grand Haven to make sure that FirstNet's available for all of our folks that put their lives on the line every single day to keep us safe.
Greg, one of the things that Ruth had mentioned to us before she left was the fact that AT&T was starting to move away from programming content to being more of a programming provider. And there has been some discussions and some comment made about the decision by AT&T owned DirectTV to drop the One America News Network. Some say that this was strictly a political decision. Others say that the decision was just basically a business decision at the end of the contract with OAN and DirectTV, which is its biggest supplier in terms of how they distribute their content. This is going to hurt OAN. Obviously, again, you speak for AT&T. But talk about the fine line, if you will, about the providing programming access and providing the programming itself.
Right. So we don't dictate programming or content or control programming that any channel, any news network, news outlet, any broadcast network that we carry that is carried on DirectTV. As a matter of fact, I'll also add that last year in 2021, the company entered into an agreement which created a joint venture that created this new if you will, this new company called DirectTV. And by the way, you can get DirectTV over satellite or through streaming. And so we're part owner in this new company along with another company, and so we are not involved in the day-to-day. AT&T is not involved in the day-to-day management of that company. We've got no control over their programming decisions and who can or cannot do whatever on that product at all.
I was looking for some clarity on that particular situation because some might say, well, he made the decision because OAN is definitely driving on the right side of the road, and some might say, well, that's censorship. That's a fine line for communications providers.
We have to be careful, and that whoever like I said, we don't control how all that happens. We're focused on wireless and on broadband and on public safety. We executed that transaction in 2021. We've got another transaction going right now to spin off our Warner Media operations with Discovery. That's moving forward. The one thing I will add, Gary, I know we've got just a couple of minutes here left. For your listeners, att.jobs has everything we've got out there. For your business users, business.att.com, and for consumers, www.att.com. Would love to talk more about that over the next year. I'm so happy that you've had a chance to invite me on your show. I cannot be more pleased, and I'm just so excited to get to know you and your listeners. There's lots we can talk about on the community side, lots of things happening, with young people and bridging the digital divide that hopefully we can get into as well as we go forward. And so thank you, sir.
Greg Clark, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome aboard. And if all goes well, we'll talk again next month.
So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg Clark, on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.